Hey everyone, it's Carter King. If you're an educator, a leader, or just a parent who wants to teach kids about space, check out my newest book, Carter's Journey Through Space. It's available now on Amazon, Target, and bookstores everywhere. Come explore the universe with me.
Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create environments where people thrive. Through real conversations, practical strategies, and powerful stories, we equip leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself to build cultures rooted in purpose, performance, and authenticity. Because culture isn't something you talk about, it's something you live. This is the Contagious Culture Podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create ecosystems and environments where people thrive. Today's guest, oh man, she has spent 20 years helping individuals, families, foundations, and organizations move resources in a way that is thoughtful, value-aligned, and community-centered. Her work with COR Philanthropic Strategies, she helps donors and philanthropic institutions move from good intentions to meaningful impact. She's facilitated over $200 million in charitable gifts, managed major philanthropic portfolios, helped design grant-making models, supported impact investing opportunities, and all of this amazing work. But what I love most about Jaimi's work is that she is not just asking, how do we give? She is asking, how can we give differently? How do we build trust? And how do we move closer to community? And how do we make sure generosity actually leads to transformation? Because that's what this podcast is all about: transforming the minds, the hearts, and the spirits of people and moving people to action. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. Thank you. You make me sound so wonderful when you describe it.
You're doing amazing work. Like, absolutely amazing work. Your career, your background, your story is absolutely amazing. And I'd love for us to start with story. What was the moment that you realized this was the actual work that you wanted to be able to take part in?
That's a really good question. I don't know if there was a moment rather than you fall into philanthropy sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So I'm only going to say 20 years ago because I don't want to keep dating myself. So 20 years ago, I had my first job at a private foundation, and I had this mentor, and she's still my mentor today, although she hates that term. Hi, Fran, if you're listening. And she, back then, this was, again, 20 something years ago, philanthropy was very traditional. You write a proposal, you write a letter of interest, you review it, you look at a proposal, you do a site visit.
Yeah.
The way that she always did it was thinking about community first and how are they building, what do they need, how can we support them, rather than the other way around. And she's just always had that vision and really brought the thought of community first to me. So that's why I started it and why I love it.
Let me ask you this, because you opened up something that I'd love to know. What did you believe about philanthropy earlier in your career that has really changed over the period of time?
Oh gosh, so much. When I went to grad school, and again, dating myself, but corporate social responsibility was not necessarily a really big thing back then. So I was getting my MBA and I'm like, okay, I'm going to work for a big company like Coca-Cola and Target. And I was applying to all these things thinking, because my teacher was part of the one who started Patagonia's corporate social responsibility. And everyone knows how great Patagonia is.
Oh, of course.
And I was like, okay, I can do this. I'm interested in this. By the way, I ended up meeting my husband a week later. And so that didn't happen. We got married, and that's a whole other story for another podcast. But I really thought that if there was this significant amount of money that these huge companies have, right? How can I be at the table to help think differently, to help move that money, to help think about community? Even though you're a big company, I was hoping that my voice could really think about like, well, how are we thinking about this differently? How are we thinking about the way that we serve the community, not just about the business's sustainability numbers or, impact numbers. So that's really what I wanted to do. But again, wonderfully married and with a beautiful child, but have been, in philanthropy. And I think where I learned a lot along the way was really working directly with donors. And so when I started working directly with donors, that was really at the Women's Foundation of California and then at the Marin Community Foundation as, doing various roles. But what I discovered is that many people want to think differently about philanthropy. And what I mean by differently, meaning like, I'm not just going to write you a check and you have to do what I do, or, don't get me wrong. I know there's people who do that. No, I'm not in my bubble, but it was really, I like challenging people to say like, well, have you thought about like a gender lens framework on what you're doing? If they're really interested in supporting women and girls, have you thought about a race equity lens to that? Like if you're really talking about supporting, Black and brown students, like, then you should really think about like the leadership and the board and all of that. So, thinking about equity frameworks. And then also what I really love, and I could talk for days about this, but is collaborative philanthropy. I really think that is the way things are moving. And that means being in a giving circle. So that's my giving circle, Latino Community Foundation. So being in a giving circle where I think you sit around the table, you're talking about the needs in your community, you're using your social capital, your philanthropic capital. I mean, that is a way to leverage. And I think the other piece is collaborative philanthropy in like, how do you leverage your funds? How do you pool resources, leverage your funds? And that's what I feel is like the movement of thinking differently.
There's somebody listening in right now that wants to be able to get into thinking differently when they're approaching this opportunity that we have in front of us to give through philanthropy. But they don't know where to start. Like, do they just reach out to their friends? Do they join a specific board? Like, where would you recommend them beginning? Let's say they have resources. Let's say they even have social capital. How would you go about recommending them to begin?
Yeah, so I think where we always start are the 5 T's, right? And help me if I forget them. But time, talent, treasure, testimony. Time, talent, treasure, testimony.
I only knew 4.
Okay. Well, actually, I'm in this other program that says 6.
I heard another one that said teams, like team.
Well, that's a good one, but that isn't one that I know. But time, talent, test. Anyway, I'll remember. It'll come to me. But really, you think about like, what do I want to do? Do I have this skill? Like I'm an IT person who can support a nonprofit that I love. I love their mission. And maybe in my spare time, I help them up their software because we know nonprofits cannot pay for the amount of software there. Do I want to take my family and start a fundraiser, and support that? So I think everyone can be philanthropic. I think that we want to democratize philanthropy, which is, again, bringing people together, collective giving. So there are many ways to start. I think if you're a regular person like me, you may just volunteer. That's philanthropic because people can't, that's a resource. You are providing a resource to someone else who cannot do something. So I do that a lot at my daughter's school and with various nonprofits. And then if you have, like you said, this social capital, talk about the organization you love, like go and host something or bring other people to the table and talk about it. Host something at your house and say like, I want you to know about this like amazing organization that I support. And here's why. And then of course, if you have, significant wealth, then you want to really be strategic. So you don't want to be necessarily writing those same checks to maybe your alma mater or your church, which I think you can still do. But you have that money to be strategic. And we know that the world is on fire right now. Yeah. So like, how can we use that money together? And that's where someone like me, or, there's other philanthropic advisors, or, you can talk to your friends. Like, what are you doing? How is that going? But really make sure it's your passion. Make sure it's meaningful to you. it's really values aligned to you, and then move forward.
And just to circle back, it's time, talent, treasure, ties.
Ties, thank you. Okay.
That was the one. And yes, I have heard this before. Yes. Okay. You know, you mentioned something earlier, and you talk a lot about the difference between this idea of charitable intent and meaningful impact. Like, why is that distinction to you so important?
Yeah, so I think that, so I work with a lot, I'm in the Bay Area. So I work with a lot of people who maybe were software engineers and their company went IPO, right? And all of a sudden they're like, what do I do with this money? I'm just a software engineer, you know, or people up here in, you know, in the winery, they're like hands are in the dirt and then they sell their winery and they have a lot of money. And so I think the intention is, okay, I need to set aside some money. I'm working with my CPA, I'm working with my financial advisor, and we're thinking about that intent to do it, but then they get stuck, right? So then they're like, and I use this number all the time, there are 1.5 million, although someone told me it was 1.9 recently, but 1.5 million nonprofits in the US. So it's like people get stuck. Is my money going to make an impact? Am I going to, you know, where analysis paralysis, I'm so overwhelmed by it. And so I think how to move from intent to impact is to do it at the beginning. So a lot of times I think people write a check or they give to an organization and then a year later they're like, well, what was your impact? What did you do with my money? You need to talk about it at the beginning. Like, have a relationship with the nonprofit, have a relationship with your advisor who can ask these questions. Like, you know, if this is the budget that we're thinking about, what can you do with that money? How can we support you? How can we make sure that you are creating the impact that we want to see? So instead of waiting at the end, you're working with them at the beginning, working with the donor and the nonprofit together so that it's trust building and that you can say, okay, let's say I only have $10,000. Well, I wish, and let's say you only have $10,000 to give, right? And you're like, today, I'm going to give to climate change, but is my money going to do anything with climate change? Like and then, so you find that right organization that maybe has boots on the ground, that is really already knows what's happening in there, and that you can provide some direct service, like parents there's a group here of mainly mothers, but also, you know, parents, guardians who go out and talk about environmental hazards in their neighborhood. And so it's like that can really make an impact for your own neighborhood. So it's just, I think it depends on, anyway, my point is that just to work at the beginning to make the impact, to really think about that with the nonprofit, trust-based, and then build it from there.
How would you recommend, though, that in practice, right? Because I think about, even with me, I would love to donate all of these different causes and all of these different things. But even as I look at the landscape of Charlotte, North Carolina, where I reside, a lot of those bigger organizations are asking for the resources, but it seems to me that they have things under control in regards to their size of their budget. So as someone like me that would be willing to invest not millions of dollars into a cause, but something that could potentially make a dent into something, how can organizations on the front end, on that beginning, showcase the impact? Whereas, you know, for a grassroots organization, it's a lot more clear, but for an established organization that has the numbers, has the metrics, has the budget, what would that actually look like in practice? Hey, it's Kyle. Sorry to interrupt your programming, but I got a quick culture check for you. How's your team's energy right now? I mean, literally, right now. Are people feeling inspired? Or are they just showing up? See, here's the truth. Culture doesn't change because we talk about it. It changes because we live it actively every single day. And that's what I help organizations do. Build contagious cultures that people actually want to be a part of. Through keynote talks, interactive trainings, and hands-on consulting, I help leaders transform the way their teams connect, perform, and grow. So if your culture needs a little bit of spark, let's light it up together. Visit theculturelab.org, again, theculturelab.org, or connect with me directly on LinkedIn at Kyle S. King to learn more about how we can work together. Because remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching. Now let's get back to the...
Yeah. So, I mean, It depends, I guess I would say. So that's not a great answer. But I think, let's say with a larger organization so I give a monthly donation that just comes out of my paycheck to a few organizations that are very large, but they are, to me, fighting the good fight. And so my $50 a month is not going to do anything, but I feel like I know that I am supporting something that they are working hard for all Americans or, across internationally. So I think there's that way that like you were like, I have a passion for it, but my money is not going to make that huge dent, but I want to support what they're doing anyway. But then I think with larger organizations, like for instance, I had a Giving Circle member or Giving Circle that was really interested in creating a case manager so it was a UCSF hospital. And it was, as many of us know, Black mothers, there's a lot of maternal health issues and infant mortality. And so they really wanted to know, like, how can we support that? It's UCSF. This is a huge hospital, right? But they really were interested in supporting this maternal health issue. So just by having the conversation with them, they realized that their pooled money, and I think it was $100,000, could support a full case manager for 2 years, but not, 100 each year. So they would have never thought something like that because it's this huge hospital, but they were really able to say, like, we wanted to make an impact, have this significant support for women to do that. There's another organization that many know, NAMI, National Association of Mental Illness, and that same Giving Circle had really thought about, NAMI's so big, but they realized there was a gap in what was happening in San Francisco Unified School Districts. So we approached them like, is there something with this amount of money that you might be able to do at San Francisco Unified School District? Because they're doing it at various other school districts. And they said, yes, if you give us this money, we can start assemblies, we can go in, we can talk to people, we can have one-on-one support. So it's just really conversational,
That's so good. I really appreciate you sharing that because I even think about various opportunities or even organizations within the city or even the state. And that's such a great question. It's like, hey, we have this amount. What could we do to be able to drive impact within and then make it more of a collaborative experience rather than just kind of, casting ourselves out before we even have the opportunity to be able to transform these communities collectively. What are, for donors listening, like what are some of the questions that donors should be asking themselves before giving?
Asking themselves. I think the things that, I always say with my clients are really like, we've already established their values. We've really looked at that. We've looked at their priorities. So I think the first thing is, does this match your values? Like, if leadership is one of your big values, do you think this leader is amazing and going to accomplish it? Most of the time, the answer is always yes. So, or maybe equity is like your really significant values line. Well, you want to find an organization that is really supporting that work and doing that. So I think that's a question you need to ask internally. Does the organization that I'm looking at or thinking about match with my values? That's like the really the first question. What else did you ask me?
Just really, what are the questions? Like, does this align with my values? I think that's a great question. What are the, I guess, priorities, that you're seeing donors have? Is it just based upon where they would give, or is it based upon what their colleagues are giving it to, or is it based on a testimony and a lived experience? Like, what are some of the things that you see that donors are moving towards, especially in today's economy?
Gosh, there's so many different things. So I think about, like, I have this one joke, which is not a joke. Like, one day you're looking at, saving animals in Sonoma County, and the next one you're like thinking about international economic mobility for women, across the world. So that's my job, is to, not have the answers, but to find the right resources for clients to think about. And I think, there's there's just so much out there, and that as long as you feel like this is meaningful, this is right for me, then just start something. You can start with this a little bit. And I'm sorry, I think I forgot your question. I just went on a tangent, but I think what I tell people is maybe you're interested in impact investing. Like, you don't have to use your whole portfolio. Try a 1%, or now I remember what you asked me, which was, what are people giving to? Impact investing is a huge one now, which is doing double good with your money, right? So while your money may be sitting in a donor advised fund, some donor advised fund allow impact investing. And so or supporting loans to people who are not getting traditional loans through a bank. But I think democracy is always one. I think, that's huge what people are talking about. Education is always important. But it just really, everything depends on what the donors, there's so many things out there in the world to think about.
Oh, no, there's plenty of things. And I think, with any nonprofit leader listening in, and even just the organizations that we support every other Friday for our Friday morning fundraising series, they're always asking the question of like, how could we build relationships with donors? What are the things, where are they? What are the things that we should be bringing to the table to talk about with donors, with advisors, with foundations? So if you're talking to a nonprofit leader that wants more opportunity to be able to scale their impact, how do they go about building relationships, or how would they think about building relationships with donors, advisors, and foundations?
Yeah, this is a question I get all the time, of course, because, part of my job is to be a proxy sometimes. I don't call myself a gatekeeper because I feel like I'm pretty accessible. So, but to be a proxy because people want to be anonymous, or everyone has busy lives. But I think if you know that your donor has a donor advised fund, this is a very easy thing that I tell everyone is, know that philanthropic advisor. So everyone gets a letter, or you should get a letter that says, this was from maybe an anonymous fund. Contact us if you have any questions. So call that donor advised fund and ask them like, okay, I know you can't tell me the donor, but I would love to get to know you, especially if it's a community foundation. I'm coming, I guess, from the community foundation lens, but you want to get to know them. Come visit. Can I share with you? Don't share like monthly things, but can I share with you maybe 6 months, like an event we're having, and then the yearly impact report? So, and say, can you share it with all your other advisor colleagues? So that's the one that I think a lot of people miss. I don't know how many times I would thought, like, out of the, hundreds of gifts that we give, there probably weren't that many people who just reached out to the philanthropic advisor from that. So that's one. Yesterday, I was on a call where we were talking about capital campaigns and how people can raise large amounts of money for things. And one of the things that I have found supporting donors interested in capital campaigns is you should be talking to the donor years and years before you're going to ask them for, a seven-figure gift or even a 6-figure gift. This should be not transactional. It should be a conversation that you're having. You're getting to know them. You want to know their story. And especially there are many people who are giving, 7-8-figure gifts because it's part of their legacy. They want to leave a legacy. So you should know, as, a nonprofit, like, what is their story? What is their legacy story? Get to know them, not just, and some people don't think of, because some donors are just, like, let's get this conversation and hear what we're doing. But I'm always like, why don't you tell them why you're interested in this? Or, I tell the donor, why don't you talk about your story of what makes you interested in this subject or this issue area? And so I think more storytelling would be helpful for nonprofits to get their donors to do more storytelling. And then I think this is so tactical, but not big reports. Every donor I know is like, I'm not going to read that. So you just tell me what it says. They're like, just tell me what it says, And so I think a 1-pager that is showing your highlights, what you've been accomplishing, what you've been working on, maybe a story, that is the best way to, just really get people to notice you and to highlight. Yeah.
When I think about noticing and when I think about highlighting, I think about the term like the USP or unique selling proposition. For our nonprofits, what can make those nonprofits stand out besides just the metrics, the one pagers or the mission statements?
Same answer, stories. I think people want to hear that their money supported, 10 scholarships for students who would have never been able to stay in school, right? Look at all the SNAP benefits that were gone, right? And we're still dealing with less money going to communities. So if you're even you don't have to be a ginormous food bank, but maybe your nonprofit has like a little mini food bank, right? Where you're just like in your neighborhood or something like that. Share, like we had, 50 families where before we only had 10 because this is what's happening. So I think it is numbers, because I think naturally people like numbers, but I think it's more of the number with a story, with a number with a human being behind it, some type of support like that.
That's so good, because it's a battle that we often have as nonprofit leaders. And I sit on the other side, more so of the consultant side, helping nonprofit organizations have these conversations. And even myself, I talk about, it's not always about the metrics, it's about the stories, because the stories connect with people.
Yeah.
And I guess in your background and your experience, what can nonprofit leaders do to tell stronger stories where it aligns with that person's emotion, but it also tells a very compelling case on why giving to that organization is so important?
I don't necessarily know if I have a good answer to that. I think it's the same. I think if the donor already likes you, they already believe in your mission, they believe in your leadership. So show them what their gift is doing, right? Show them that, just like I said, like this many scholarships, or this many people served, or we had a legislative win, or even if you don't have a legislative win, like we tried, we got this close and we were able to, we're moving the needle, right? I mean, it took 90 years to get the women's right to vote. Like policy and advocacy takes a long time. So I think it's just the relationship, is just the stories, and it's getting to know their stories, like I said, so that then you can relate to that. Like, oh, well, a lot of people probably give scholarships because maybe they had a hard time in education. They didn't have that. And so when you know that, you kind of get that connection.
I love that. I really do. What's next for you? Like you've done a lot. You've worked with a lot of organizations. You've impacted a lot of people through your work as well. What's next?
Oh gosh, what's next? I just started my own business doing this about a year and a half ago. So that's every day. So I'm still thinking about that. I'd love to grow it. My whole goal in starting my own business was to move money to community. I don't even know the number now. It's so big, but the last I heard, it was like $320 billion sitting in donor advised funds, right? Yeah. So I think, and I know many people have donor advised funds, like that I said, that they're not moving it because they don't really know how, or they're like, is my money going to make an impact? So that my goal is just to keep doing that, to keep people interested, to find joy and meaning in philanthropy. Philanthropy should not be stressful. It should be joyful. No. And so like, I just want to keep doing that. And the other thing I'm trying to do is have more thought leadership about philanthropy, just like we're doing here, because I think it feels so abstract to so many people, and I don't want it to be. I want it to be, a connection and collaborative.
What is one thing that you would want to leave with people about philanthropy that oftentimes we can't read in an article, see on a post, or just pick up a book and understand? Like, what is your one thing?
Some people don't like the word, but I say that everyone's a philanthropist. So just like I said, using your 5 T's, like this has been going on for centuries, right? Before there were donor advice on further money, people were, giving money to each other in circles, and thinking about what that looks like in African countries, right? Like there was a lot of that. So it's like supporting your school, doing all these things. What you're using your time, your talent, your treasure, your ties, your testimony, that is part of philanthropy. That is philanthropy. And so my goal is to also just democratize that. Like think about yourself as, when you support your neighbor, you're being philanthropic. Maybe you don't want to call yourself a philanthropist, but that is the whole scope of philanthropy that I see.
Why do you think for so long, though, we've only made philanthropy in the sense of financials? Like, those are the only people that deem themselves as philanthropists, the people that are actually cutting checks.
Well, because everything's about capital, right? We're in a capitalist world.
Yeah.
So I think that, when people have more money, they have more power. They have had more power. They have had more choices. So I think that that's, what it was seemed. There was, they were the ones giving the money. They were the ones saying, well, tell me why I want to give you the money, And so, but I think, again, I'm hoping that that model has changed and more people are thinking about, at the human side of things. But I think it's just been a long road to this way. And there's so many good books about thinking about philanthropy differently. I can't remember his name, but Glenn, who's at the Stupski Foundation, he has a new book about thinking, like really radicalizing, thinking about philanthropy. Dimple has a book on the new era of philanthropy. So there's just so many people who are actually putting it out there.
Yeah.
How to think about philanthropy differently, because it has been old school and traditional.
What gets you excited? What gets you excited about, philanthropy in 2026?
Well, as you can see, I could talk about philanthropy forever. So philanthropy in general gets me excited. What gets me excited in 2026? It's a really good question. I think, like I said, the more collaborative philanthropy, like that's what I love seeing. I love figuring out how people can get together. I'm in a lot of women's networks. So really there's this, great wealth transfer for women at Next Gen. Like, let's talk about it so early instead of later. Right. And so that gets me excited of like, how can we go out there and really bring other people together and be collaborative and think that way. And I love, I'll have to give a plug for this, but community-led participatory grant making of collaborative funds. So if you don't know them, there's a participatory grant making community. Shout out to my friends, Katie and Alistair and many others in there. But I really think a new way to give is thinking about participatory grant making, which means the people who are closest to the issues to be the ones to find the solution and be the ones to be at the table to actually give out the money and make the decisions.
I love that. Jaimi, we have to have a round two. We have to have a round conversation. This has been so great. And I think I believe that it's going to help so many people that are listening. Where can people find you, and how can people get access to your wealth of knowledge as well?
Well, my website is corephilanthropy.com. So COR, not with an E. And when you go on my website, you'll see why I named it that. So there's a little story there. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I try to be pretty active on LinkedIn and, again, talk about philanthropy. So you'll see a lot of that. So feel free to follow me or talk there.
Jaimi, this has been amazing. And I just thank you for showing up, giving your heart, giving your time, giving your ties and your talent as well. And your testimony, like all of the things. And what I've really learned is it's about moving with meaning. It's about trust. It's about community. It's about, yes, strategy, but making sure that there's alignment and resources within our community. I love the idea of being able to participate in the decision-making process of where the money goes. I think that's so powerful. And our guests, if you're listening to this episode, I want you to like, subscribe, and go to her website and hire her to do all of the things for you. This is another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast, where we help you create ecosystems and environments where people thrive. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Contagious Culture Podcast. If this episode challenged or inspired you, hey, take a second to share it with someone who's building culture in their world. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself join the movement. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or YouTube at Kyle S. King for more tips, tools, and methodologies to be able to help you create this ecosystem of absolute excellence. Until next time, lead boldly, live intentionally, and remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching.